Stay tuned to the end of this video to a word to our patrons. Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Talk FGO 1TED, the show where we let you know if you want to roll that 5-star. Well, we're a day late and $1 short, but we're going to do our best to reintroduce you to everybody's favorite power couple, Sakamoto Ryoma and Super Oreo. So today, if this is your first Wanted, we're going to be hitting you with characters' real-life history, their fate lore, their mechanics, and more. So get comfortable and enjoy your flight over the ocean. And again, sorry the video is late. I'm absolutely blindsided they decided to keep Ryoma releasing so soon. They did this before they even did the Anime NYC panel. Obviously, that has happened already by the time I'm actually getting to recording this script that I wrote, but, you know, it's out there. Oh, and I don't normally do this for, event story releases, but, yeah, there'll be some Gudu spoilers for the chapters that have been released so far. This banner kind of coincides with the big finish, so if you're behind, you may want to wait a few before watching it through. Anyway, let's get into the bee's knees. Alrighty, so, as some of you watching along probably do know, Sakamoto Ryoma is a pretty famous samurai and political figure in Japanese history, specifically during the end of the Bakumatsu period. Honestly, through the whole thing, but he's more famous at the end of it. And this, of course, takes place immediately before the Meiji Restoration. So, Ryoma was a revolutionary and pretty progressive political thinker. He was enamored with democratic governments and specifically cited the American sentiment of all men are created equal as one of his big inspirations when he wrote the 8 Proposals while shipboard. That was basically a sketched out plan for Japan to achieve a modern democratic parliamentary government with professional armed forces and modern currency exchange. Considering this was the, mid-1800s and the shogunate was not yet deposed when he wrote that, it's kind of a big deal. Ryoma was very famous for his fusion of new and old. He used a sword and was in fact a sword master. More about that later. But also he carried a revolver. And as you can see from the image I've chosen for the bed for this section of the show, you're going to be here a while, he often dressed in, appropriate formal wear for a samurai, but he loved Western-style shoes. Also, his preferred brand of gun was Smith & Wesson, by the way, if you want to take that as an endorsement. Anyway, thanks to the power of modern record-keeping, we know that Ryoma was born on January 3rd, 1836, in the town of Kochi, though perhaps the city of Kochi would be a better description, in the domain of Tosa. That is the modern-day Kochi Prefecture, which is why I say that city might be a little more appropriate. It's kind of a big deal. The Sakamoto family were ranked as Goshi, or country samurai. It's the lowest position in the hierarchy of samurai, so not quite commoners, but not very high-ranked samurai. They had attained this rank in previous generations through wealth as sake brewers, so they were merchants originally who managed to get enough prestige to raise up to samurai. Now, in Tosa, there was a very strict division between the higher-ranked and lower-ranked samurai. This was the result of an old conflict from the Sengoku period, actually. The former heads of the Tosa domain were the Chosukabe family. They sided with Toyotomi, and then when the Tokugawa shogunate came into effect, were deposed, basically. The old Chosukabe subordinates were allowed to keep their titles, but at low ranks. And this turned into systemic classism all the way down. Shocking, I know. Yes, it was this sort of class tension Ryoma was born into. Even though he was a samurai, he was constrained to Goshi districts and so on and so forth. Now, at age 12, Ryoma was briefly enrolled in a private school, but he didn't really show scholarly inclination, and supposedly, according to some of my sources, he was bullied. One of his older sisters, I'm presuming it's Sakamoto Otome, but because she seems to be the only one we have a lot of records on, but he did have 3 older sisters, so kind of meh. Anyway, one of his sisters pulled him from the school and enrolled him in the Oguri Ryu dojo at around age 14 to study the blade. By all accounts, by the way, Sakamoto Otome was a tough lady. Not a lot of things I could dig up on her, but she is said to have taken responsibility for raising Ryoma after their mother died, and the records do state that she was an exceptionally tall and strong woman, both for modern Japan and for the time period, and she was skilled with both martial and fine arts, so, interesting facts. Anyway, Sakamoto was so skilled that he was considered a master swordsman by the time he reached that time period's adulthood. I wrote this line down before I crunched some numbers that you will see at the end of this line. But despite his low Sora rank, his skills were such that he was allowed by his clan to travel to Edo to study swordsmanship further in 1853, when he was around 17, by the way. Quote-unquote adulthood. He ended up studying at the Chiba Dojo of Hokushin Itoryu, which is a very famous dueling style. It was founded by a teacher who was regarded as one of the last Kensai, the Sword Saints. And the school produced several famous swordsmen, a lot of guys who went on to go and develop the modern sport of kendo, and also several members of the Shinsengumi, including Yamanami Keisuke. Funny how that works out. Anyway, Ryoma's pretty good at sword stuff. He received a certificate of mastery from the dojo and was gifted the rank of Shihan, translating roughly as master instructor, and taught kenjutsu at the Chiba Dojo. So, yeah, pretty big deal. But other stuff was happening in 1853. Commodore Perry was here with his black ships and the ultimate Gaijin smash, and forced the country to be open. Stop being closed. This, along with the Unequal Treaty, as they called it in Japan, which was signed in 1854, brewed up a lot of anti-shogunate sentiment. In fact, the emperor straight up said don't sign the treaty, but the shogun did anyway, so this caused a lot of conflict. Now, Ryoma returned to Tosa in 1858 at around age 22, and he became involved in his local anti-shogun politics. This included working with his old friend, Takechi Hanpeta, who was a higher-ranked samurai from Tosa. He was actually above the cut. But he met Ryoma while they were studying swordsmanship in Edo, and Takechi returned to Tosa also in 1858 due to the death of his grandmother. Now, Takechi would spend the next few years taking several trips around Japan to speak with like-minded individuals and study ideology, and in 1862, he founded the Tosa Loyalist Party, aka the Kinoto, who had the famous slogan, "Revere the Emperor, expel the barbarians." So, very classic stuff for this period. Now, Ryoma was initially part of the Kinoto, but when the party planned to assassinate the Tosa governor, the governor of Tosa placed there by the daimyo, Takechi wanted to do something basically to revolutionize Tosa there, and Ryoma wanted to do something that was about helping all of Japan, so they parted ways. This means that Ryoma left the Tosa domain and became a ronin, which was a very big deal at that time. You were not allowed to leave your province without your lord's permission, on pain of death. One of his elder sisters actually supposedly committed suicide because of the disgrace, so it was very serious. Now, during this time, Sakamoto would often use an alias. One of the ones most widely reported was Saitani Umetaro. We actually have a report from some Western gentlemen who met with him under this alias. Now, one of the first major actions Ryoma tried to take against the shogunate on his own was to assassinate the official Katsuki Kaiu, who was head of the Kobe Naval School, and in general was a big student of military theory when it comes to naval tactics. He was doing a big push to modernize the naval force in Japan and to give Japan a unified professional navy. Now, because Katsu was a modernist and a supporter of the Bakufu, the shogunate's government, Ryoma was opposed to him initially, but Katsu actually managed to persuade the young Ryoma, it's still 1862 when this happened, so he's about 26, for the need for long-term military reform. So, Ryoma then worked under Katsu as his assistant for several years, studying naval warfare. But then, in 1864, the shogunate began to crack down much harder on their dissenters, so Ryoma was forced to flee to the Satsuma domain, which was the center of anti-shogun sentiment at the time. During this time period, Ryoma established the Kamayama Shachu Company in Nagasaki, using his naval and merchant family backgrounds. This was widely considered one of the very first corporations in Japan in the modern sense, and they were originally a trade and shipping company, but they eventually became known as the Kaientai, the Ocean Support Brigade, which was a private navy of professional sailors, which became basically the basis for the IJN. So again, lots of naval history getting done here. Now, while in Satsuma, working on all this, Ryoma began to work behind the scenes to continue building an anti-Tokugawa power base, and in 1866, he was instrumental in the founding of the Sato Alliance, which was a secret confederacy between the domains of Satsuma and Choshu, who had previously been mortal enemies. These two domains, these two lands, traditionally fucking hated each other. But Ryoma, as a neutral party, was able to come in and bring them together under the sentiment that they fucking hate the Tokugawa. Funny how that works. Ryoma was also instrumental in helping Choshu get modern weapons through Satsuma's connections overseas. Satsuma had already been receiving, new modern military weapons from Britain at the time, so they were able to pipe that along to Choshu. It was also in 1866 that the Tadia Incident occurred. Ryoma was staying at an inn known as Tadia in Kyoto when some men attempted to assassinate him, probably working for the Bakufu. Now, Ryoma was forewarned of this attempt before they actually got to him by his future wife, Narasaki Ryo, commonly known as Oryo. She was working as staff at the inn and was bathing at the time. She heard one of the assassins moving through the garden and disarmed him of his spear. According to some reports, the assassin was brazen enough to thrust the spear through the wall, narrowly missing her shoulder, and she just grabbed it, took it from him like a boss. She then rushed up to the second floor where Ryoma was staying, throwing only her loose robe on, like not even bothering to get fully dressed, and warned Ryoma and his bodyguard, Miyoshi Shinzo. Ryoma then fended off several of the Bakufu men with his revolver and sword, and sustained only minor injuries before fleeing. Afterwards, it is said that Ryoma recuperated hot springs in the Kagoshima area in the Satsuma domain, with Oryo in what is claimed by some sources to be the first Japanese honeymoon. Ryoma and some of his friends were more familiar with Western culture, so they may have had a little bit of a wedding trip while he was recovering. Also, yes, Ryoma is a badass. It's said that he parried swords and spears with his revolver. Interestingly, by the way, not a lot of, theory crafting has been done into why Oryo did that, but based on my own historical reading, she may have sided with Ryoma because her own father was imprisoned during the Ansei Purge by the Tokugawa against imperial loyalists, and he died shortly after he was released from prison when Ryo was only 21, I think. So yeah, interesting facts. Now, with the support of the Sato Alliance and those new weapons, Choshu was able to repel a punitive attack by the Tokugawa shogunate in 1866, which basically spelled the end of their power. Ryoma was welcomed back to Kochi with honors because he was now a very big deal, having brokered that alliance, which was upsetting the shogunate, and the heads in Tosa had kind of, come around to a different way of thinking. And on behalf of the Tosa domain, he helped set up the negotiations between the shogun and the imperial court, and was there to help push for the final resignation of Tokugawa Yoshinobu in 1867, him being the final shogun, and bringing about the inception of the Meiji Restoration. Unfortunately, Sakamoto was not able to see the restoration to its conclusion, as on December 10th, 1867, he was attacked by an unknown group of assailants in the Omiya Inn in Kyoto. The attackers killed his bodyguard and mortally wounded Sakamoto and his associate, Nakaoka Shintaro, before fleeing in the confusion. Now, the Shinsengumi, who were based in Kyoto, were officially blamed, and their leader, Kondo Asami, was actually executed on this charge. But later in 1870, members of the Kyoto Mimawari Gumi, which was another pro-shogun group, claimed responsibility for the assassination, but the exact veracity of this is still a matter of debate. The assassination is officially classified as unsolved, and we may never be sure exactly who was behind it. Anyway, I told you all that to let you know that Ryoma is a big fucking deal in Japan. The Kochi airport is now named after him. In Kochi and several other places, there is a Sakamoto Ryoma Memorial Museum. The asteroid 2835 Ryoma is named after him, and 5823 Oryu is named after his wife. That's right, he's in a star catalog. I believe those were discovered by Japanese astronomers is why. But also, he's a giant figure in pop culture as well. There's many straight-up adaptations of his stories and life. There's some more fantastical ones. Most recently, I think he's the main character in the re-released version, the remastered version of Like a Dragon Ishin, available now. So you should check that one out if you want some more action. That's where the song I used for the intro comes from. Alrighty, so moving on to the Fate lore, the capital L stuff. The fun stuff. I'm kidding, the first part was very fun. Anyway, Ryoma's been established as a character in Fate for quite a long time now. He was established as his counter-guardian self in Koha Ace, and then obviously that got reworked into Redline. The plots he deals with in these stories is also very similar to his introductory role in FGO. That was the Legend of the Imperial Capital Grail. So, we've seen his basic story as a servant adapted a couple of times. We know that Ryoma made a contract with the world when he was assassinated. This is how he became a counter-guardian. But it's also stated that if he was ever to be summoned in a normal Grail War in Japan, he would be a massively powerful servant on par with Nobunaga due to his fame boost. Not necessarily in other places, but he'd be real juiced up. Ryoma makes the most sense as a writer, given his naval background, but also his unique noble phantasm, Oryo-san. Yes, his wife is a dragon, and his noble phantasm, and thus his mount. That's the punchline. So, Oryo, as she appears in Fate, shares the name of his real-life wife, but she's not really that person. Instead, she is described as a Mizuchi, a kind of water serpent who is just one step removed from a true dragon. So, we say she's like a dragon, but she is not a normal full-blooded dragon kind. She's a kind of, spirit that is slightly different. This is why you see many snake comparisons. Now, how this works is that Oryu is summoned alongside Ryoma. She has her own unique personal skills in human form, because, she's a noble phantasm. And she's a powerful fighter who Ryoma can do combo attacks with, but when the true name, like a soaring dragon, Amakakeru Ryuga Gotoku, is released, Oryu can assume her dragon form, becoming a being from the Age of Gods, which is an EX rank NP. Sadly, under normal circumstances, this is a one-time use only, as the world would need to correct the era of having a, monster from the Age of Gods rattling around. That's just not how it's supposed to be, okay? Now, so, how did Ryoma acquire a stalker dragon wife who gives me frogs? There's actually a real-life anecdote for this one, once again letting you know that the Fate team has done their legwork. So let me relate that to you. On Mount Takachiho, there's a bronze spear. Literally, by the way. Now, this spear is alleged, it is stated, to be the legendary Amano Sakahoko, which Izanami and Izanagi used to create the world. It was later bestowed to the earth, as that mountain, Takachiho, is where Amaterasu's grandson, the Ninigigo Mikoto, was said to have first arrived in Japan. Now, while we don't know exactly when the real physical spear got on that mountain is, there's some evidence to suggest that it was during the Nara period, sometime between 710, 794 CE. Anyway, I told you all that to tell you this part. Remember how I said that Ryoma took his new wife Oryu with him to Kagoshima? Yeah, that's where Mount Takachiho is, and Ryoma and Oryu, in real life, visited there on their honeymoon, and according to a letter he wrote back to his sister, he pulled the spear out of the mountain, presumably because he was a badass like that. The spear had previously remained undisturbed because I guess the locals didn't want to fuck with it in case it was the legendary spear, and Ryoma was like, nah, bet. So Fate basically adopted this story with some extra urban fantasy. While visiting Mount Takachiho, Ryoma finds Oryu the dragon, sealed by a spear from heaven, and removes it, mostly just for kicks, just because he can. Because it seems like it's painful, to have a spear stuck in you. And she basically falls in love with him on sight, stalks him as a result, follows him around, calls herself his wife as kind of like a, paying you back thing. When Ryoma was assassinated while Oryu wasn't present, she seals herself in a deep abyss. Now, why was Oryu sealed in the first place? Well, now we need to do even more world building. Now, since the Amano Sakahoko is the spear reversing heaven, we've got some stuff here going on here. And basically, what I've pieced together from future lore statements and what's currently happening in this event, Fate is basically conflating Oryu with Hiruko, Izanagi and Izanami's first child, who, depending on the interpretation, was either born without bones or born without arms and legs as a result of their slightly improper sexing rituals. As a result, Hiruko was cast out to sea and washed up in Hokkaido is usually the given location. It is then usually said that he became the god Ebisu, but Ebisu also probably arose earlier and more naturally as a god of fishermen prior to this conflation in Japanese history. But yeah, so instead of becoming a cool lucky god, Oryu gets very mad and tries to climb into heaven as a dragon, a similar sort of progression. She's kind of, a limbless serpentine thing, and then is like, fuck you, I'll go to heaven as a dragon. But is sealed by the spear falling to ground, and then she grows more powerful in her resentment over time until she is freed by Ryoma for basically no reason and no reward, which seems to erase her grudge. We learn most of this in the current Guda Guda event, but the spear wasn't even really intended as a seal. It's rather kind of like a bridge to the heavens to allow Oryu to become a proper deity. But it's also supposed to be utilized by Ryoma to basically mark him as another heaven-sent figure to get Japan back on track. But he didn't really care about any of that and was just like, whatever. Also, this probably means when you get to that scene in Guda Guda and there's that voice that speaks to Ryoma and says that Oryu is their child, I'm going to guess it's probably one of the big eyes. I would assume Izanagi, because, Nami is sealed up in the Yomi. But yeah, no. Fun facts. Anyway, I told you all of that to explain that Amano Sakahoko is the other noble phantasm that Sakamoto Ryoma can use. As, again, in real life, he wrote a letter about how he climbed up this mountain and was like, ooh, cool spear. Pulled it out. Haha, I'm a boss. Put it back. And this allows him to be summoned as a Lancer. Normally, by the usual Fate rules, Ryoma can't access both Oryu and the spear at the same time. The writers are usually given to have multiple NPs. It is supposed to be a thing where, one class should be more dominant or you should be, double summoned. But through the power of love, we get the version of Lancer Ryoma in FGO who can use both. He's just that cool. This results in a powered-up version of both Ryoma and a powered-up Oryu. Neither is quite a god, but also not quite what they were. Super Oryo, as she calls herself, or sometimes Hyper Oryo, is referred to as the White Orochi of Takachiho. And so this isn't like fully explained, but best I can piece together is the idea that she's basically the guardian spirit of the mountain, and also Ryoma. She's not quite a dragon or a god, that's why she still calls herself, Orochi, a great serpent, but she's a powerful, Mononoke, a powerful spirit. At certain times during Japanese history, I was able to dig up that serpents, and especially white serpents, have been considered divine messengers and guardian spirits, just like that one boss in Sekiro. Also, what called a spear, it's obviously that the construct is able to change itself. It's a divine construct. Ryoma has a couple different animations where he uses it for different things, so, it's fun. Also, I have more fun facts. Fun fact number 1. In 1913, Mount Takachiho, which is an active volcano, erupted, shattering the spear. The handle remained embedded in the mountain, but the head was presented to the Shimazu clan, who enshrined it, but it is believed that it is lost. However, the head has since been replaced, and it is still said that the smith is unknown. Somebody just said, let me fix that, and went about their business. Crazy, I know. So, this new Lancer Ryoma was introduced in this Gudu Gudu event, Ryoma's Close Call, or Ryoma's Narrow Escape in JP, if you've heard it by that name. And obviously, Ryoma has had previous Gudu Gudu adventures, so we can expect to see him crop up in any further Gudu-related scenarios which keep coming up. Also, he has a character in Redline, which is still technically ongoing, so, he's still got some character stuff to develop. And that's gonna bring an end to that segment. Okay, so, mechanisms. Ryoma's an SSR Lancer now. He trends on the higher HP, lower attack side, though not quite to either extreme. No matter how you look at it, there's a few servants in either direction of him. He is QAABB, which is, funny enough, a deck usually found on Sabers, though he is a Sword Master. And he has pretty high hit counts and thus very slightly below average NP gain. It's 0.47. His NP has become AoE arts now, and while it's only 3 hits, it does bolster a boost of NP damage first on overcharge, and also gives him a whopping 50% defense up for 1 turn. Art stall never dies, baby. His first skill is a pretty good party-wide buff, 10% to 20% arts, 20 to 30% crits, and also a 1x 3 turns overcharge boost for 3 turns, both on all those. I know it was redundant, but that's usually how I write the, X times X turns. Listen, I've been at this a while. But yes, very good all around. Second skill is also pretty rad. It's a 30 to 50% battery, a 50 to 100% buff removal resist, and also just debuff immunity for 3 turns. Yes, just debuff immunity and 100% buff removal resist. You shall not debuff me. Final skill is pretty normal, but it's a nice 20 to 30% arts and buster up on self, and 5 to 10 stars per turn, all of which are for 3 turns. For passives, he has Magic Resistance C+, for inherent debuff resist. He has Writing EX, so that 1 quick card really slaps. It's already 5 hits, so it probably slaps pretty good. And a unique passive from Odio, which gives him a 10% crit damage up and a 10% crit resistance. His Append skill is also Anti-Alter Ego, interestingly enough. Keep that one in mind, maybe. So, roll-wise, I know that arts loops may be slightly out of fashion, though I myself am still doing them. But this is definitely what Ryoma is for. He has an AoE NP, he's got double steroids, so you're looking at, if you've maxed out all your skills and are using both buffs in conjunction, you're looking at himself getting a, 50% total arts up. And he also has, a big battery, and he has the ability to generate some stars for longevity, which, he can either or do arts crits or buster crits for the damage. He wants you to fire up his NPs, cap some guys, and then wrap it around again. But also, he is kind of a big tank. He's got, flat up immunity to debuffs that can't be removed for 3 turns if you've got it maxed out. He's got a huge 50% defense on that NP, and he has a little bit of passive crit resist. And he doesn't have bad HP. So, he is going to be chunky, and it does mean that Ryoma can kind of work as a half support or an off DPS for story content too. So, perfect for blasting waves and clearing ads, but also being able to support the team and will not necessarily fold right away to a boss. Now, this shouldn't shock you, but being an arts unit, I'm going to recommend Castoria as the pair-up for this. She's got the battery, she's got the buffs you want, and she's got hard defenses and a debuff cleanse to help Ryoma's more soft defenses and his immunity when he's off burst. He doesn't have a debuff cleanse, so if you are not using your battery or you've already used your battery and are, not in the rotation to use that skill again, he may pick up debuffs, which you could be like, nah. But since Ryoma does have his own 50% battery you can work with, You can also tuck in a unit like Tamo in there as well to give him even more NP juice and some recovery time with both heals and cooldowns. Those synergize very well with him. If you're looking for a more offensive unit to take the heat in a boss battle, I would say he probably pairs pretty well with Melusine, the single-target version, and his fellow Guda Guda alum Kagetora. You know, those are both single-target archers who can get in there while being supported by Ryoma. If you need budget support, don't sleep on Paracelsus. And, you know, I feel like I can't write in the script every time, even though I know it's new information for some people, but I can't write, oh, and also, you know, Waver's technically card agnostic kind of a thing. Now, for CEs, we can have some fun here. He's got a 50% battery, so you may try your favorites, obviously, Golden Sumo. But you can also do arts-focused ones like the Dive to Blue. But since you're probably pairing him with one or more chargers of your own, not just his own 50% charge, you can also go Maximum Overdrive and hit like a Black Grail or something. I'd prioritize arts and NP output, maybe some crit on the side, but really you're gonna probably use Ryoma with huge batteries, get him to fire his NP, wipe out a wave of guys, hope that gives you enough refund with Overkill that you can do it again. And if not, you have enough extra battery to wrap back around and do it again and get you to the third wave, etc., etc. It's not a perfect system, but it works. Now, surprisingly, Ryoma has pretty manageable Ascension mats. They're all pretty normal. They exist. You should have them, probably. His skills stay mostly the same, but they do have the addition of the big bells, which could be a little pricey. You're looking at, you know, something like a handful of hero proofs, and I think it's, sorry, my graphic is tiny where I'm looking at it on my preview. You can see it much better than I can, trust me, people at home. But I think it's like 6 plus 18, so it's like 24 big bells per skill, which those are newer, and so they can be a little dicier to get that. But mostly it's pretty relaxed compared to other, you know, brand new units. Makes me wonder if perhaps, given that his kit is kind of straightforward as well, though still good. Seriously, 3 turns of just debuff immune and 100% buff removal resistance. It's pretty solid. But it makes me wonder if maybe he was, you know, designed as an alt for a while and they just needed the right event to put him in. That kind of stuff does happen. Now, Ryoma's had about 3 banners so far, though knowing how close Ian and JP are working on promotion these days, I assume nothing, though I do kind of doubt that he will get another one before this year is out, but maybe, because he has already had one in JP this year. So you've got the Ryoma's Close Call banner, which we are at right now. You have an upcoming QMF banner, which would be in 2024, next year. That will probably get translated as a back-to-school banner because it was in September originally. And also, there is the Kaldea Heavy Industries event, you know, which kind of calls back to this Guda Guda. That's in a couple of years. That will have a Ryoma banner in it. He is also limited, so he'll be on all future Lucky Bag GSSR campaigns, so keep that one in mind. Further fun facts. I think this is like fun fact number 2 that I've called a fun fact. Possibly fun fact like at least 5, and once I haven't actually numbered. But his banner, you know, where he's also together with Oreo, was released only 5 days after the event premiered because the original JP date, 11/22, was Good Couples Day. This date has no such significance in the Ian release. It's just here to fuck my shit up. But that's basically where we are. A lot of history, very straightforward unit. Hopefully I don't sound too much like a walking corpse doing this. I did not get enough sleep last night to do this. And if you liked it, please watch this video approximately 8 infinity times and become like a dragon. It's true. You'll achieve enlightenment if you watch it 8 infinities. But I had a great time writing this down. Ryoma's rad, and I like him a lot. Not just as a character, but also as a guy. He's pretty cool, you know, in a historical sense. But I'm going to guess that probably by the time this is like completely finished and uploaded to YouTube, where it will go out to patrons first, I will probably have been working on it for 12 hours minus some meal breaks in there. So not literally 12 hours straight. I'm not trying to say that. But it's been a while, okay? I hope you like it. I like it. I just hope I don't sound too fucking sleepy on it. Anyway. It's time for me to freestyle an outro. It goes a little something like this. You're watching this video on YouTube. Give it a like if you liked it. Leave your comments in the comment section down below. Especially if you like the fact that I went like 20 minutes on history and folklore. Love to see some comments about that. You can also join the conversation and post your roll results on our Discord. We have a roll thread under the FGO channel in Discord if you want to join and hang out with us. You can also make sure to subscribe to get more Wanteds. I think we're going to be good until Tunguska Sanctuary, thank God, so I've got like a month off to be blindsided again. Well, maybe not blindsided. They announced it at NYC, so, you know, we got some lead up. Anyway, make sure you're subbed for that. Ring the bell for notifications so you always know we post a new video because, like I said, this one's been super delayed because it was a very big script, very meaty compared to some of our more recent episodes. But it's there, so you should check it out. You can also consider joining our channel memberships for membership badges and emotes, and supporting us on Patreon, so you can get access to episodes early, like this. And don't forget to check out our podcast, Let's Talk FGO, every week about FGO, and also other stuff now. We talk about other things. Okay, cool. And, hey, speaking of our patrons, I'd like to give a few of them a shout-out. Like Adam DeHarp, Blacklist OG, Call Me Zed, Carlos, Dragon, Flightless Icebird, Jeremy Vasquez, JDV9000, Jester the Fae, Jonathan Sandoval, Chris Starlight, Legendary Boss Hunter, Liam Kessler, Regent Raptor, Rise of Kenji, Rogue Robin, Charvor, Sean Pryor, Some Guy Named Bob, and Varian the Crow. If you like what we do and want to see us do more, consider supporting us on Patreon. Thank you for your support, everybody. You make this possible.